Two teams dropped the first two games of the league championship series at home and went on the road to figure out what will happen next. One team is handling it perfectly. The Brewers, not so much.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. And if you want to get a hold of me, I'm at Instagram at Sully Baseball Podcast. But the best way to get a hold of me is to come right here to the YouTube channel and leave a comment. If you're going to leave a comment, make sure to leave that hashtag everyday Sully. It helps us find you, and we're here to find you. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 and bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Hey, let's get on to the trivia question. Sandy Alomar Sr. died the other day, and I said Sandy Alomar Sr. was on deck when what famous home run was hit? Big John 08865 had an interesting guess. He said Henry Aaron's 715th home run. Nope, Dusty Baker was on deck when he hit that home run. Argonaut Comedy is an everyday Sully, and he wrote, and I found out Argonaut Comedy is indeed a he. Argonaut Comedy wrote, trivia answer, the Chris Chambliss home run. That's right. When Chris Chambliss hit the home run off of Mark Littell to clinch the 1976 pennant for the New York Yankees, and in one of the absolute bizarre calls in the history of broadcasting, because Keith Jackson was calling it and Howard Cosell took it over. And I think he probably threw an elbow in Keith Jackson's face. But yes, that's the answer, is Chris Chambliss's home run. All right, you know how I said the other day when both the Toronto Blue Jays and the Milwaukee Brewers dropped the first two games at home, I said those series were not over. It takes just one game to, basically set a tone for what you're going to see and how things can turn around. And there's always room for an unlikely hero and always room for someone to reach back and give it their all. Now, yesterday's game in Seattle, at first, I really thought, because the Mariners jumped ahead to an early 2-0 lead, and I really thought, wow, the Mariners are just making a statement. They're up 2-0 going into the third. And then an interesting thing happened. The Blue Jays bats were absolutely dead in games 1 and 2, and they needed something to spark them, because as we saw in the series against New York, when their lineup is going, even in the one game they lost, their lineup can just produce runs because they just get hit after hit after hit, and someone had to spark the team. And it turned out to be Andres Jimenez, who hit that 2-run homer, and suddenly the game was tied the other day. And then the floodgates opened. And my dear friend Chris texted me in the middle of it and said, this is batting practice. And yeah, in a way, it kind of was. And in that game on Wednesday, you had the Jimenez home run, and you had Vladdy Jr., who got on base 5 times and homered. And he wound up leading the offense. And Shane Bieber, who was kind of an afterthought at the trade deadline, hadn't pitched because he was injured, and Toronto acquired him because we just got to get a couple of pitches here and there. And he reached back. He got that early trouble, but he reached back. And it's a walking testament for maybe you sometimes just kind of load up on pitchers who have been there and done that. And Bieber, who won the Cy Young Award in the COVID season and had been obviously a fine pitcher for Cleveland, but had his injury issues, got out of that early trouble and threw 6 strong innings. And he got 8 strikeouts, and he got the 13-4 win and absolutely silenced the Seattle crowd. All right. So right there, the Blue Jays made sure they knew, okay, we can still hit. and we can go into a hostile territory. Well, this was a game where everything seemed to be lined up in Seattle's way. Max Scherzer was so bad in the months leading up to, or really the month leading up to the postseason, that he was left off of the playoff roster against New York. I want you to stop and think about that. This was a team that was scheduling a bullpen game. They literally said, we would rather have a GD bullpen game than hand the ball to future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer. Now, it wound up working because the bullpen game was the clincher and allowed them to throw Gosman in game one. That didn't work out because Gosman didn't pitch for the actually he wasn't bad, but the Blue Jays lost that game. But this time around, they handed the ball to Scherzer, future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer. And again, he let up a home run very early in the game. I believe it was the second inning. He let up the home run to Josh Naylor. Yeah, it was the second inning. And I thought, oh boy, it may be a rough day. And then he reached back and he remembered, I'm Max Scherzer. Now, what happened in the third inning? Andres Jimenez again. And this is the sort of thing that happens when a team has a turnaround. Almost always there's an unlikely hero in the middle of it, someone you're not expecting to kickstart the offense. And that's exactly what happened here for the second straight day. Jimenez hit a two-run home run. But bless Scherzer, who looked like he was struggling. He only let up 3 hits, but he did walk 4 batters. And he did throw, 87 pitches. And a little bit he was laboring. And at one point, Schneider came out, and it was great to see. It wasn't quite the dramatic moment of Mike Mussina pointing at Joe Torre, telling him to get back in the dugout. But it was Scherzer saying, I'm Max effing Scherzer. Leave me alone. And he wound up pitching into the 6th inning. Was he great? No. As I said, he walked a lot of batters. But this is a quality that I hope doesn't go away with the inevitable retirement, which may be happening this year. I don't know, with Max Scherzer. I mean, he's pitched, 18 years in the major leagues. And this was a bit of a struggle. This year was a bit of a, he had some decent outings, but for the most part, it was a bit of a struggle for Scherzer. And I don't think he's signed beyond. No, his contract is up after this year, and you don't know what he's going to get. He's made more money than his great grandchildren could possibly spend, and I don't know if he wants to drag it on much longer. So we may have watched his final game, or this could be his final postseason run. And he reached back and he pitched well enough to get the team into 5 2/3 into the 5 2/3 innings. So the bullpen isn't coming in the 4th. And that's a skill that needs to be instilled into pitchers to squeeze an extra inning or two, even if you don't have your best stuff, to get it forward a little more, because then they had to, they were using Dominguez and Hoffman and Varland, but it was really low stress innings at that point. That's got to be a skill that is taught. That's got to be a skill that is considered at least important. I don't understand how it couldn't be important to try to get that extra inning. Don't wear down your bullpen. But Scherzer knows how to do it, to get through another inning, even if you don't have your best stuff. And with that, the Blue Jays have suddenly retaken home field command, home field advantage, and they're throwing their best pitcher tomorrow. Now, the Mariners have stared down 2 Skubal starts and a Gosman start and won all 3 of them. But what it means is, down 2-0, the Blue Jays gave a clinic. They remembered who they were, and they played the way they were. Their pitching was good enough to win. Their bullpen was deep enough to get them through. And their offense, well, had themselves a ball. However, not far from what I'm sitting right now down the 5, the Milwaukee Brewers, the team with the best record in all of baseball, showed, well, quite frankly, how not to do it. Let's talk about our friends over at PrizePicks. Guess what I'm doing tomorrow? Actually, it's going to be today because most of you are going to be seeing this on the 17th of October. So today, you know what? I'm going to be going to the Dodgers and the Brewers in the NLCS. And let me tell you something. It is a great day if you can't be there in person to be going to PrizePicks and seeing if you can make the correct pick on who's going to do what, where, when, and why. PrizePicks is so much fun. It can add so much more excitement to baseball or football. You could just pick more or less on player projections. Mookie Betts is going to hit one home run. Shohei Ohtani is going to strike out 5 batters and hit a double. Or if you want to pass it on over to football, Josh Allen's passing yardage, all these sort of things, you're in the game. And do you what? You can set your lineup no matter what sport it is in under a minute. And my favorite part is they added stacks. If you want to ride a player, you could select their pass yards, rush yards, touchdown, or strikeouts, RBI, whatever, all in one lineup. And you know what? It's fun to follow the other players of the app and copy their lineups with just one click. And for football, there's a new injury reboot feature. If your player leaves and doesn't return, it won't cost against you. Now, there's a special max discount promotion live on the board right now. And this is actually for basketball. For the Golden State Warriors versus the LA Lakers game on the 21st of October, Steph Curry is discounted to only needing more than half a point to win. Mix and match players from football, baseball, and basketball and build your dream lineup today. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup wins. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. So, yeah, I mentioned it. I'm going to be going to the Dodgers-Brewers game tomorrow evening. And for the second straight year, I'm going to be at Dodger Stadium what could be a clinching game. Last year, I was at Game 6 of the NLCS. And when I bought those tickets, I knew it was going to be Game 6. And I thought there was a chance, when I bought them, I thought they were going to be playing the Phillies. But I thought there was going to be a chance that could be a clinching game. And it turned out to be. When I got these tickets, they would have been Game 2 if they played the Cubs, or they would be Game 4 if they played the Brewers. If I thought this was going to be a clinching game, I would have thought it would be a clinching game for Milwaukee. But here we are. It could be potentially a clinching game for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, I know everyone on the planet Earth is rooting for Milwaukee to win. There's some people who are even making the argument that if the Brewers lose, it'll get a lockout going further or something. I don't know about that. I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again after the playoffs and the World Series about my thoughts of a lockout, which I think if they baseball can't afford to lock out for 24 hours. And this is not about owners versus players. This is about 28 owners versus 2 owners. And one of those 2 owners spent all the money in the world and couldn't even make the expanded playoffs. I have a lot of thoughts. A salary floor is much more important than a salary cap. I've seen no evidence that a salary cap would do anything in baseball to improve the competition if there is not also a salary floor. But what are we talking about? There won't be a salary cap. It's a non-factor. So again, we'll have to talk about that on a later date. But here we go. The reason I was hoping Milwaukee was going to win today was because I want this series to go deeper. These series, I'm not a Brewers fan, nor am I a Dodger fan. I want these series to go deep. Although if I see another clinching game, that may be kind of fun to be there when a team clinches. But a sweep is always so demoralizing. I've seen my teams get swept over the years. And when you're on the receiving end of a sweep, oh, it's such a gut punch because you're down 3-0 and you're like, I mean, it just feels like you think about all the time you spent watching the team. Now, of course, I also saw my team down 3-0 in 2004, and something happened there. But Dave Roberts is in the dugout of the Dodgers now. He's probably not going to let that happen. But the the Blue Jays figured out how to be the Blue Jays again. And the Brewers did not figure out how to be the Brewers again. Now, Jacob Misiorowski, this is why wins and losses are such a stupid stat. Misiorowski is credited with a loss. He came out of the bullpen because they did the Sully opener thing. They were hoping Ashby could squeeze a inning out and then be able to use Misiorowski starting in the second, and that didn't work out. I don't get. I get it to a degree, but I don't get it to another degree. And then Misiorowski came out and pitched great. He wiggled out of trouble in the first inning, and in the end was credited with 1 earned run over 5 innings, of which he struck out 9 batters. He kept he kept Milwaukee in the game against Los Angeles. The Dodgers got a triple and a double in the first 2 batters. It looked like, oh boy, this is going to be an old-fashioned butt whipping. But then the Brewers came right back and tied it. But what happened after that? Tyler Glasnow was good. Absolutely, he was. He pitched into the 6th, struck out 8 batters, and then you had Vesia. You had Treinen, who's even with his 2 good outings he had, pitched 2/3 of an inning today, pitched a third of an inning for the save in game 1. His ERA in the playoffs is still over 5 because he's not reliable, but they let him get away with stuff. Batters were swinging at pitches that were out of the zone. But most importantly, my cousin Dave, who went to Marquette, he's the biggest Met fan I know, but he went to Marquette University in Milwaukee, so he has a huge soft spot in his heart for the Brewers. He was there during the Paul Molitor, Cecil Cooper, Robin Yount, Jim Gantner years. And he wants the Brewers to win. And I, of course, have been saying I would love to see 2 teams that have never won the World Series face off, and we could have that with Milwaukee versus Seattle. I digress. The Brewers played so tight. They were so tight. They were swinging. My cousin Dave texted me and said, why are they all swinging at the first pitch? Why aren't they letting the relief pitchers get worn down a little bit? And I was thinking the same thing. I thought the same thing in the loss the other day in Milwaukee against Yamamoto. It was like Yamamoto was pitching like 8 pitches in 1 inning, 8 pitches in another inning, because everyone was swinging on the first pitch. No one was letting it go deep. And when you have the likes of Vesia, who's not had a great postseason, Treinen, who's had a terrible postseason, and Banda, who's neither great nor terrible. I mean, he's been fine, and Suzuki's been fine, but it's like, and I'm sure someone will throw out all sorts of numbers I'm not taking into account, but it's not Rivera. It's not Koji Uehara in 2013. It's not Brad Lidge in 2008 when there was a relief pitcher just goes on this great run, or a deep staff like they had for the 2015 Kansas City Royals or the Nasty Boys of the 1990 Reds. At some point, you got to be able to say, hey, these are beatable pitchers, and we're the best team in baseball. And they just were swinging too soon. They were letting them off the hook. And also, there was a little bit of a panic by Uribe with 2 outs, and he was trying to do a pickoff play. And it didn't work, and that brought in the 3rd run. And with it 3-1, even though it was 3-1 in the 6th, at one point facing Treinen, for whatever reason, that 2nd run made such a big difference in the feeling of any big rally that Milwaukee can get in. In the end, the combination of Vesia, who stranded as one inherited runner, so Vesia, Treinen, Banda, and Suzuki combined for 1 hit and no walks and 4 strikeouts, and obviously no runs. And the Brewers just looked tight. They looked absolutely tight today, and it was really, really tough to watch. Durbin had a good game. He hit a double, he hit a triple, and he walked, but he was only driven in once. And the pitching, for the most part, was fine. If you looked at this line, knowing what the Dodgers are capable of, 8 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 15 strikeouts, and you're the best team in baseball, and you're not facing Yamamoto, you're not facing Snell, you're facing the law firm of Glasnow, Vesio, Trine, and Banda, and Sasaki, and you got one freaking run off of them. It's tough to win games if you don't score runs. A wise man once said that. But now think about this for a second. You ask yourself, why are the Brewers in this situation? They're down 3-0, and they're in LA. How did this happen? We can break down some of the sloppy play. We can break down some of the the errors that are completely not the what you would expect from them. And they're going to be facing Shohei Ohtani and as a pitcher tomorrow, and they couldn't squeeze one run. But think about this: they lost game 1 2-1. They lost game 2 5-1. They lost game 3 3-1. 3. They've scored 3 runs. 3 runs, not averaging 3 runs a game. They scored 3 runs total. Yes, LA has good pitching, but they're not the 95 Braves. This is a team that's pressing the Milwaukee Brewers, and we can all see it. It is as plain as the nose on your face. And it has put them in an 8-hole. Now, behind the 8 ball. Now, is it possible for them to come back? Maybe. But their bats are completely dead. Completely dead. And some of that has to do with, the quality pitching, but some of it clearly is them pressing. And they're probably not going to have Jackson Chourio, who's had the hamstring, lost, 5 weeks this year, 4 or 5 weeks this year, and they had to be taken out of game 1 against Chicago. And then, he came back, he's been playing hurt, and it came back to haunt them. So they're scoring 1 run a game for the first 3 games, and they're going to be without Jackson Chourio, and they're already on their heels. I'm not saying the series is over, but holy cow, this is a rough watch, seeing the best team in baseball play like this. Now, we'll see. We will see. They need to win. They can't win 4 games, but they can win 1. And then you build on from there. But there is a really, really much larger than 0 chance that the champs could be back and waiting for the winner of Seattle and Toronto. And so much of that has to do with the fact that these Brewers are playing super, super tight. Hey, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 to get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the apps. FanDuel adapts to however you like to bet on the games. You like to build parlays. You want to try the player props. Some people like to follow the live lines during the games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding in on the action. Whether you're a casual fan like I am or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com and download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, so I'm going to be at the game tomorrow. At Dodger Stadium, and we're going to see what happens. On this day in 19, you're assuming you're watching this on the 17th day of October. On this day in 1979, the first World Series I've any in memory of ended with Willie Stargell's big 2-run home run, giving the Pirates the lead, and ultimately they would hold on to win the 1979 World Series. Some other big things that happened on this day in baseball history. One of the most significant things happened off the field in 1960 as baseball was decided to finally expand the National League created two teams, one called the New York Metropolitan Baseball Club, that would be shortened to the New York Mets. Joan Payson was the original owner, and then a Houston group led by Judge Roy Huffines, and they were the Houston Colt 45s, and eventually changed their name to the Houston Astros. On this day in 1989, I was home from school in Palo Alto, California. I was on the football team, but I had an injured knee, so I wasn't even practicing. And I was setting up a tape in the VCR. Remember doing that? For my dad, who was a huge Giants fan. And I wanted to tape the opening ceremonies at Game 3 of the 1989 World Series. And and of course, just moments before Game 3 began, we got hit with a massive earthquake that did damage to the marina, did damage to the Bay Bridge, and it was so cruel that the symbol of the 89 World Series was the Bay Bridge. I was living in the Bay Area, and it was baseball crazy there. You had the Giants finally in the World Series for the first time since 1962, and you had the A's in the East Bay crazed for Canseco and McGuire and Ricky Henderson returning. Henderson was acquired in midseason because he was in the Yankees the year before. And they were so intense to get revenge and win the World Series after the debacle with the Kirk Gibson home run or Hershiser the year before. And oh my goodness, there was so much excitement for Giant fans. I can't believe, I know so many Giant fans like, I can't believe I'm seeing my team in the World Series, especially 2 years before they blew a 3-2 lead against the Cardinals in the NLCS. So both fan bases had recent, gut punches, and they knew one of them would win. And the Bay Bridge, it was called the Bay Bridge Series. That was even in the logo. And of course, the Bay Bridge partially collapsed during that earthquake. And the baseball didn't resume for another 10 days. A lot of people just saying, just call it off. Ultimately, the A's came back and won. It was a really, really uncompetitive World Series. And Dave Stewart pitched a complete game in Game 1. Mike Moore pitched a solid game in Game 2. And then there was a massive, delay before the Game 3 was resumed. And remember, they announced that Dave Stewart was going to pitch Game 3. And more than one Giant fan I know said, that's not fair. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. But why wouldn't you? I mean, you have your ace ready to go. And Dave Stewart won that game and ultimately the World Series MVP. That was the last championship in Oakland. If you had told me that with that team set up to win, looked like in perpetuity, and with all the other great A's teams that happened, that was the last title, it's still really, really difficult to comprehend that. But it's true. But it's going to lead to today's trivia question. Who are the scheduled pitchers for Game 3 of the 1989 World Series before the earthquake hit? After the earthquake, there was a 10-day delay, and they brought back Scott Geraltz for the Giants and Dave Stewart for the Oakland A's. But who were the scheduled starting pitchers for Game 3 of the 1989 World Series before the earthquake? That is a trivia question. And please write it down below. And thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB game night, every game, every night until a World Series champ is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB game night, Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Talking about the two league championship series, how the Toronto Blue Jays righted the ship and the Milwaukee Brewers are facing elimination. This has been Locked On MLB for the 17th day of October, 2025. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.